MBA, where I, most of you, I think, know this, but where I help coffee businesses with business education. So primarily focusing on coffee roasting companies who need business acumen, business support. And I was invited to moderate this lovely panel where tonight we're going to talk about sustainability through the lens of B Corp. And we're going to talk about, the title of this is Actionable Impact, focusing on the word act. What can we do in action and put in action to live out our sustainability goals? And I think B Corp is one mechanism, one lever that we could pull to do that. There are others, and so we are going to explore that topic. And I promise, based on who's sitting on the panel, that it's not all going to be roses, right? I mean, hopefully we have, Lars is suggesting maybe we argue or, whatever, that would be great. I would love to see a good argument. Arm wrestling would be fine too. But, I would love to probe and really explore this topic more deeply. So, I have my notes here, but first I want to introduce our panel. They probably need no introduction, but here we have Jill Bruner from El Grano. He's one of the co-founders of El Grano, a coffee trading platform. He has been working in basically coffee trading since 2010. And we have Alice Elliott, who is a B Corp consultant. She's one of the leading B Corp consultants and has led over a dozen companies through that process. I think we're going to learn a lot from her tonight about B Corp in general. And then next we have Lars Frallo from, oh my God, I just blanked. I'm so sorry. Clever Coffee, I'm so sorry. I even tagged you in social media. We have Lars from Clever Coffee. It's been a long day. Anybody else? And we are drinking his fantastic coffee right now, and he's a B Corp certified roaster here in Denmark. And not just his coffee was roasted, but coffee that won the Sustainability Award today. So that's fantastic. And then we have, can you tell us the name of the producer?
Yeah, so
your microphone.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. So the producer is Sun Coffee, a cooperative from Israel.
Perfect. Amazing. And then we have Sarah Maroki, the founder and CEO of Luna Origin Consulting. She worked a long time at Sustainable Harvest, and so will really help represent the green coffee side. And then we have Norbert Niederhauser, one of the co-founders of Cropster. Okay, you get the round of applause for everybody else. Yeah, that was a round of applause for everyone, right? Great. So I would love to start kind of building the roof over the house that we're going to, that analogy doesn't work. I want to start with just the foundation. Let's do that. From Alice about an overview of B Corp and the values that it's holding people accountable to.
Values, right, okay. Firstly, I'm not paid by B Lab or B Corp, right? Let's just get that out there. So I can hopefully give you quite an honest opinion about it from my experience. What is B Corp certification? I think the first thing to say, most importantly, is it grew from an understanding that the system's broken, right? And it's got more sophisticated in talking about how and why the system is broken. But some of the examples they use, which I really like and that stick in my mind, are going to be obvious to everyone in the room, I'm sure. Like 80% of original forest has disappeared. The UN has given us 12 years to reverse climate change. And one I like, particularly because I think there's about 26 people in this room, don't count, it's more or less. And that's on the social side, 26 people, everyone in this room has the same wealth as 3.8 billion people. So there's some huge inequalities, and B Lab's vision is of an economy that is inclusive, equitable and regenerative. Okay, so when it comes to values, you've got inclusivity, equity and regeneration, if you like, particularly from the environmental side. But what is it? It's a certification, okay, so it's about performance standards, and it's about them deciding what they feel are the highest performance standards and then engaging with companies to see if they meet those standards and to verify them and make sure they're transparent and accountable. So from a behavior side, to meet those values, that's what they do. And then I suppose it's also about a global movement of companies who are joining together and to articulate their stories, to move the sector on and to be activists together. They're particularly wanting to move towards collective activism and this kind of global movement of companies, changing policies, changing the way other businesses move. I suppose in the practical terms, you complete an assessment. There's about 300 or 400 questions. You submit that assessment and it gets verified by independent analysts as part of the not-for-profit side of B-Lab. And then you submit, you hopefully get certified if you've had a bit of support from somebody like me, and you join this global movement and get on board and start to do and talk about good things and improve your impact as you go along.
I just have a question come out of that. So who decided and how did they decide what good enough was?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So it's been going for about 17 years. It started by a couple of guys in the US who had a clothing company. It was like basketball clothing or something. And they put some really good policies and processes and principles in place. They tried to pay their suppliers fairly and give their employees good terms of employment and use ethical materials, and they did really well, and they made a profitable business, and of course they sold it, and the people who bought it stripped all that good stuff out and went, oh thanks, we don't need that, we'll carry on with this brand. And so they said, right, we need to find a way to maintain these kind of high standards, and one of the things that they do to maintain those standards is they ask companies to change the articles under which they're governed, articles of association they're called in the UK, to make stakeholder-centric business decisions. So to avoid making business decisions which only benefit shareholders. And that's a high-level way of answering your question, because of course then under that there sits a huge amount of detail, and as they've grown they've got hugely diverse boards of people representing different areas of the sustainability world, environment, workers, governance, customers, suppliers, who then make the decisions about those. And then of course there's growing pains. They've been around 17 years, and there's areas where they're not making the right decisions, and they're having at the moment the biggest refresh of their performance standard in those 17 years. Next year, new performance standards with 10 impact topics and a whole bunch of minimum requirements will be published.
It's really interesting to hear the origin story. I've never heard it, and it makes me think, if we're talking about actionable impact, like you just told a story of, was it two guys deciding that something needed to change, and now look where we are. We're holding panels about this, and I couldn't tell you who those two guys even are. It's spread so far, so that's really inspiring to me. That's great. Thank you. So Norbert and Lars both manage businesses that are B Corp certified. I'd love to hear more about what motivated each of you to seek a B Corp certification, and how B Corp aligns with your company's missions in the specialty coffee industry.
Should I go first or will you? Okay, thanks. Okay, so I founded Clever Coffee in 2014 in my garage. Really, it was a garage. I have the pictures. I started roasting coffee on a 1963 Probat that I bought used from a Countess. So the roaster is just called the Countess. It's still in our meeting room. We don't use it anymore. But that was how it started. I really couldn't figure out a way to get coffee tasting the way that the best coffee roasteries that I had tried really presented it. So I started to dive into the things and see, well, where does it go wrong? And rather quickly I found out that I simply purchased coffee too cheaply. It hadn't been taken care of. It hadn't been really managed probably all the way from the farm and until it hit my garage in my roastery. And meant that I couldn't get, if you don't have a great product coming in, you can't have a great product coming out, and I wasn't really happy about that. So what I started to do was figuring out that when I pay more for coffee, I get a better quality, but how do we actually make sure that the extra money that I pay also go to the people producing the coffee? And that took some years to really figure out a good way in doing that. One of the ways is trading directly. One of the ways that was for Algrano. One of the ways was working with people like Algrano. And really what we found out is that just a few years after I started, I got a co-partner in the company, our head of coffee, Lindy. And one of the things that we found out was that when working with coffee producers where we pay more for the coffee, we actually get a better quality, we get a better story, and we make sure that we get a better taste experience and a better return to the farmers. That's really the basis of what we do. So the motivation for us was that when we tried to tell this model of the way that we worked in terms of purchasing coffee, it was rather difficult for people to understand that you could go to the supermarket in Denmark and you can purchase really cheap, really shitty coffee, and then you had to pay more for our coffee. Sure, it tasted a bit better, but perhaps it was just because we were better at roasting. They couldn't really figure out where it was from. And so, in order to get volumes in the coffee that we produce, instead of just selling it to the people who already seen the light, who had already found out that they wanted specialty coffee, if we need to get really people moving from consumer coffee to specialty coffee, we needed to be as transparent as possible, and we needed to have some sort of brand or sticker or statement that said this is a responsible company, not just in the coffee but everywhere around the coffee and everywhere around the business. And that was really our motivation. It was so that when we sell more coffee, we can help more farmers and we can make a better return to the farmers. But we need to get the right people to see that this is possible, and B Corp has helped us do that. It's not a perfect system. We can argue about that later, but it's a very good way of getting larger businesses into the world of specialty coffee for us.
A theme I'm hearing from you, Lars, is like you had incredible thoughtfulness in your business, in your approach to your business and your product, and it's a way to communicate that thoughtfulness to market.
Yeah, it was both a way to communicate to the market, but as we grew, we also needed to say, well, we need to figure out a way to get good employees with the same values that we have, or at least sort of the same values into our businesses, so it works both ways, that we can do that both in terms of getting great employees and we can get great customers, really. So it works both ways to have the certification.
It's an attraction tool.
Exactly.
The love potion. That's how B Corp should rebrand itself.
Yeah.
Love potion. Norbert, how about you?
Yeah. On the search for love. Let's get started. No, Cropster was founded with the mission, and back then the founders lived in Colombia, to link the farmers to markets, to help farmers getting better prices, getting their coffees to the right people, like Lars. So there was always a very, very heavy mission on the company. And as we are in a global setting, so we have an office in Austria, we have offices in the US and in other countries. So we were looking, let's say, 10 years into the journey for a system which would allow us to grow further, but also keep the values documented in a more manageable framework. So the picture was always, what if the founders die tomorrow? Will the mission keep going? And to us that was extremely important. It is extremely important. So if you want to talk about legacy, I usually don't like that word at all, because I don't really care what happens after I'm not here. But I kind of do.
That's me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having the time of my life right now. But I'm worried about something else. So yeah, and to keep basically everybody on the Cropster bus moving in the same direction, all the employees, all the suppliers, all the people we work with. So we look for a framework which would allow us to do that a little bit more intentional and not just based on because we people got together and say this is important, we do that. And in that journey for a framework, we found B Corp, and it was appealing because a little bit further back, I tried a few things in my life. I was getting donations for development projects. I was doing research for development. All the doing good things, and I was never really happy with it. I felt like whatever, all those projects, they were not sustainable. They maybe gave an impact, they maybe helped for a little bit, but would they stay for a longer time? And until it kind of came to me, maybe I should do a business. Because a business, if it has a good business model, it runs for a long time, hopefully forever. And this is the longest project, if you want so. Cropster is the longest I have worked on a mission, and being, in that sense, successful to every day work towards a better goal. I've never had that experience in a development project or in a research project, and one of those things. I learned a lot in those projects. So I think that's part of the sustainability, and then we were looking for what framework is there which would allow us as a business to do good and work into the right direction. And that's to the core is B Corp, as it's for corporations. It asks for revenues. It encourages profits, and at the same time it encourages the distribution of profits. So it's not profits are bad or business is bad, which you ask the 14-year-old Norbert would have maybe a different answer right now. But so I think I've grown up and learned a little bit more about this world. So I think it's about what we do is important and how we do things.
Awesome, thank you. And Alice, I want to go back to you really quickly to hear, these are motivating factors for why you would seek B Corp, but I don't think it's not easy. It's kind of a long road. This is why you need a consultant to help you prepare for it, right? And I'm curious, as we sort of move into more of like the realities of seeking a certification like this, I'm curious what you have found the hardest, values or things to hit for companies, and how do they navigate that?
Yeah, I think what Norbert said that stood out was about intentionality and, to paraphrase, embedding processes and policies, embedding the stuff you were doing. So I'm sure we'll hear from the other panel members about the good things that happen in your businesses, and often it starts with good intentions, and that's okay, we do this, we definitely, we pay well and we look after so and so, and I know that because I do it. But then, like with the owners of who started B Corp, someone else comes along and it's like, well, I don't do that. So the difficult thing is actually when you talk to businesses and you say, I know you do it, but have you got a policy and have you got a process and have you embedded it into your business model? Okay, so are you making a profit from the policies and the processes that intentionally, distribute your wealth, for example? Are you an employee-owned business, and is that set in stone, rather than just, when we make a good profit, we do chuck our staff a nice little bundle at Christmas time? No. Have you actually embedded into your legal framework the ability to distribute your good fortune among everybody in your business, and perhaps even in your value chain as well? So it's the embedding of those policies and processes, which is really boring, right? It's governance, and that's actually the grown-up bit.
Yeah, I know, it's hard to grow up, right? Nobody wants to, or I don't. Yeah. So, Sarah, you have incredible experience on the coffee producing kind of origin side of coffee, and I'm curious. listening to just, if we just stopped the talk right here, I personally would be like, oh my God, everybody needs to seek, B Corp certification. But what I know is that there's an impact, right? So as soon as we start needing to verify data, for example, well, we have to get that data upstream. And so if I'm a coffee roaster like Lars, I have to go talk to my suppliers about what they are doing. And so I'm curious, in your experience, what the impact is on business operators, whether they're importers, exporters, co-ops, producers, whatever. Really practically, like, what does that look like what does it look like for them when you call them and you say, hi, I need to verify, and maybe Alice could help me with this, of like, what would you even need to ask them? But, what does that do to their business or their day-to-day when you start asking for this kind of information?
All right, that's great. Thank you, Miranda. So I think there are, I call it the 3 stages of what data collection and data insight looks. So I'm going to paint you those 3 stages, and then I'm going to flip the omelet, because the 3 stages is from the perspective of us, right, behind on this side. Then we're going to flip the omelet, and we're going to look at it from their side. But stage number 1, I call it the big scramble, meaning there is no data, right? So the moment somebody calls, we're like, all right, somebody on some laptop must have an Excel. What is it that they're asking? Names of farmers. All right, we're gonna call an emergency meeting. We're gonna send all our agronomists, and we're gonna do it. And it's gonna take us a month. That's the kind of big scramble. So it's completely reactionary. It's absolute quantitative data, right? So you want names, I'll get you names. You want hectares, I'll give you hectares. But I don't have a system. So I'm just basically reacting, to what it is. So that's the big scramble. The second stage is the certified way, right? So I have a certification, so I have compliance. So I am collecting data. I'm collecting data based on what the certification is asking me. So if I'm fair trade, I have the list of my farmers. I know how much coffee they're producing. But it's really just numbers, and it covers different aspects. I mean, rainforest might be asking me different things, or organic, it's more about your agricultural practices. That's the certified way. That's the second stage. And then the third stage, which I would say is like the pinnacle, the tip of the pyramid, is the sort of the enlightenment stage, which is the data insight. So it's actually a company that, whether they're certified or not, whether a roaster comes and asks for anything, the data is being collected. Why? Because they realize that in order to run a successful business operation, especially exporting, you have to have certain numbers at hand in order to make business decisions. For example, how much can I forecast my production so that I can commit to forward contracts, right? Which means knowing how many farmers, means knowing how much the size of the farms are, and more. It's about quality, it's variety, and so forth. And so when a roaster comes and asks at this enlightenment stage, I already have all the data. The mission there is trying to match your data collection and data insights to what the roaster or the importer is asking. But that's usually a relatively easy job because you already have insights, so you can turn them around. At the certified level, it becomes a little bit more difficult because maybe they just collect certain data and you come and ask for something different, so we go back to the scramble, right? So those are the 3 stages. Based on where you put your organization, you can basically assess the maturity of the business, right? So that's how it works. And so, of course, at the lower level, it's a lot of work. At the mid stage, it's quite a bit of work, but you already have employees actually dedicated to it. At the third level, it's almost a show off. I already have the data. In fact, I'm going to tell you more than what you need. Okay? So that's how they would do it. Then you flip the omelet, though. Let's look at it from their side, right? So data collection and providing both quantitative and qualitative is extremely time-consuming. you do need to have staff that collects the data, so you pay them. And so, generally speaking, it's an effort that is done for two reasons. Number one, stay competitive in the market, and number two, be ahead of all your competitors. But it's a big job, especially for the guys of the big scramble. And to be fair, sometimes a lot of people at Origin wonder what do you need it for, and what is, and I think we've heard this 1,000 times, but I'm repeating it, like what do I get in return? Is it higher premiums? Is it longer, more sustainable relationships? Because whether we like it or not, the flow of information tends to be quite unidirectional, right? So roasters want to know, and I'm not pointing at you, you just happen to
I
be.
saw that you pointed at me.
This is where we start finding.
Roasters ask, we know the number of farmers and their names and the stories and the prices, but then they sort of go back home and do their business, and producers will rarely say, so what was your profit margin on my coffee? And how much do you pay for your employees? It's not really in their DNA to even ask, and this is where a lot of the balance of power and asymmetrical powers kicks in. So my advice on their side is, you want to have the data because that's going to make you a better business, and to be an exporter in 20, I don't even know which year we're in.
24. It's a long day.
Almost
It's a long day.
In 2024, like, you need to have the data, especially commercial data, to remain competitive. But also be mindful and don't be afraid to sort of ask and reciprocate. That's what I would say, and that's a huge effort. Most producers are not going to ask. They are too focused on pleasing and making sure that the roasters are happy, and they are worried about other things that are happening around them and so forth. So being mindful from this side to their side is very important. On their side, I would say, yeah, you got to do it to stay in the game and be competitive and keep staying in the business.
And how, if I'm a coffee roaster and I'm maybe seeking certification or whatever, or just as a green coffee buyer, how do I recognize which level my supplier is at?
That's a good question. I would say that, first of all, the easiest way to understand where they're placed in terms of data is asking if they're certified or not. Then already, if they're not, they're below, right? So that's going to be a very big challenge. And if you are looking for suppliers that could fit into a B Corp scheme, you already know at the bid scramble level, you're going to struggle a lot. So unless you are committed or there's something more than takes you to that specific producer organization, I would say that's not a good match for now. If they're certified, they're good, but you're probably going to have to give them tools for more data insights and data analysis, because all they do is just collect the data, wait for the auditor to come, check, okay, you passed, move on, right? So at the certified level, you do need to get involved, and you will have to give them the tools or some templates to say, let's see what data you have and what's missing and how can we make that insights. And if you ask people that, for example, already do a lot of direct trade, people that already have commercial relationship with roasters and use especially the importers just as service providers and logistics, it means that probably they can already do what, they can already work with you and maybe build the systems, if they don't have specifically those, to fit in your supply chain.
That's helpful. That's a good tell. Jill, I'd like to hear more about, El Grano does a lot of incredible work of sharing its impact and not necessarily B Corp, but having an impact on the supply chain. And I would love to hear from you about what you think having a relationship, you facilitate basically relationships.
Yeah.
Are you the Tinder of specialty coffee? I'm sorry, Love Potion, Tinder, I don't mean to make it like that, but, I'm curious, what you have to add to that conversation in terms of how to still have an impact, even if you're not seeking a B Corp certification.
Yeah, well, I think Algrano has been at the impact has been at the core of Algrano since we started. Our idea was to use technology to connect roasters and producers. We were seeing that producers were getting more and more connected. We were seeing that on the other side, roasters wanted to engage more. And we thought, let's build a platform where we can connect both ends of the supply chain. We wanted to be a gateway and not gatekeepers. And yeah, this is something that we still do. And I see there are three ways that we facilitate impact at the origin. I think the first is that we make it easy for roasters to engage with their suppliers. This is in coffee a very important step for roasters when they want to look at their impact. They have to look at their suppliers, and we make it easy so they can order from one bag straight from a farmer at the origin, and we facilitate the discovery. So we verify the producers, we make sure that producers respect sustainability norms before they can offer on the platform. And then we facilitate the logistics, facilitate the quality assurance. We really try to make it bridge two worlds that don't trust each other and bring that trust and facilitate this. And this is something that we've done and that we're still doing. And this is the first way I think we facilitate impact, that making this engagement with the supplier going beyond an importer. This is the first part. The second thing is we incentivize. We not only make it possible for producers and roasters to engage, but we incentivize them to engage through technology. So we have a platform that at different point in the flow of the coffee, where we ask roasters to engage with producers, producers to engage with roasters. We have yearly 4,000 messages that are shared between producers and roasters on our platform. We had 50 meetings between producers and roasters during the show in the coming today and in the coming 2 days. So yeah, I think this is where we go a step ahead. We incentivize them to engage. And then I think the last part is that we make it easy or we try to facilitate for roasters to report about the impact. So we have access to information or data on the relationship of roasters with producers. And we make this data available for roasters so they can have their dedicated impact report downloaded from Algrano, where they can compare the price that they pay to the producers, to the C market, to the fair trade market, the fair trade minimum price. And we try to make this data available and easy for them to report on.
Do you think that has helped? Because I'm just thinking, like, if you make that connection point easier, then does that mean that you're working with a lot of people that are in the scramble stage, you know, or does the platform and like the way you have it structured help them kind of build in, oh, I might need this data or that data? Like, how do you deal with that, or is that not what you found at all?
I don't think that we have, or let's say we don't have this request from roasters, let's say, to report on that. We have a few roasters who are B Corp certified who come to ask for data, but I mean, if roasters ask for this information, then we make it available. We haven't not got to the stage where we also facilitate or promote this reporting for the roasters.
Lars, let's bring in the coffee roasters perspective here. How do you think, from your experience, B Corp certification can be leveraged to sort of raise the tide for working with suppliers? You know, so you are in an interesting position because you buy the coffee, so you're a buyer, who's B Corp certified, but you're also a vendor because you sell wholesale coffee. So I just want to kind of explore that a little bit in terms of how you think it helps all the, what is it, rising tides raise all ships? How does that help raise the tide for your whole supply chain that you're kind of sitting in the middle of? And then is there any benefit to you as a supplier that you've seen in your wholesale business?
Okay, sure.
Sorry, that was a lot.
Yeah, but okay, let's take it one step at a time. Okay, so in terms of being one of the people who actually asked the coffee producers all the questions about the things that we need in order to become B Corp certified, we try to do that in a manner where we don't go out and just ask and say, well, we kind of need this information, please give it to us. We do it in a different way. So we try to go out and say to the coffee producers and say, we are looking into becoming a B Corp certified company. That would mean that we need information for you guys. What would it take for you in order to provide us with this type of information? Then we have a talk, normally like a video chat, and they say, well, we need to spend this amount of hours on getting this information if we don't have it in advance. And then we say, okay, well, we need to pay for your time or pay a premium for the coffee for the initial information that we need. Secondly, and that's probably more in the leverage way, so that when we became B Corp certified, we experienced a doubling in the amount of coffee that we needed to purchase and that we sold. We've done that every year since. We became B Corp certified in 2021, up for recertification this year. Really exciting, by the way. Yeah, it's a huge process. If you find that becoming B Corp certified was a hard process, it's almost harder to become recertified because the amount of points that you actually get is devaluated over time in the last 3 years. So when we grow as a business, we try to think of it as we do not want to grow on the backs of the farmer. We want to grow with the farmer, so that when we are able to move more coffee and we pay a premium for the coffee directly to the farmers, and we can buy more coffee that they would probably otherwise have to sell at sea market prices, for example, then that would be interesting for both parties. So we try to develop our business so that when we are in a good state where we can sell more coffees, that should also benefit the coffee farmers. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Amazing. And I would love, Sarah and Jill, for you to react to that in terms of, because I'm thinking about, we have this divide between global north and global south in coffee for now. We're consuming more and more coffee in the global south these days. But what does it look like to do better and be better in these partnerships? I think, in my opinion, Lars just gave a really nice example, but I'd love you to react to that.
Yeah. No, I think it's. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think Lars pointed it very, very right. I think the risk of certification is paperwork. So just filling paper, and that's what everybody hates.
That's not a risk, that's a fact.
But the risk is that it stays there.
Yeah.
It stays there. And I think what the good thing about B Corp is that it forces roasters to think about their impact. And I think if you think about your impact, you probably want to go beyond paperwork. And I think what Lars said is you actually then talk to your suppliers, not as a supplier, but as a partner. So moving from a supplier, very transactional relationship, to building a relationship with a producer that will benefit if you grow, and if your market is demanding that you are showing that you are more socially and environmentally responsible, you're sharing this with him, and you show him your partner, not your supplier. You're showing him the growth potential that this represents, And I think this is the main challenge. As a supplier, you will comply, you will provide the paperwork, but as a partner, you will support because you see the value and you will want to contribute because you know that you will also get rewarded for that.
Anything to add, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think the level or the depth of the impact that you have at origin is goes as far as the type of relationship and the depth of relationship you want to have with your supplier, right? So again, if you look at it from the origin perspective, there is, you know, an array of problems like climate change, one, labor shortages, another one, corruption, gender violence, exploitative practices, coyotes, you know, it just keeps on adding. So from the origin perspective, you know, they can say, you want impact, you know, spend 1 week with me in Guatemala in the hills of, you know, Atitlán, and, you know, you'll know what you can do, right? So that's from their side. But the roaster is like, well, how far can you go, right? There are some roasters that say, look, I can just pay a higher premium, and that's what I can do, but I go through importers. I'm busy on my front. I can't engage at origin, and that's fine. Impact is purely financial. And a lot of producers will already be very happy with that. They're okay, right? But then you say, okay, no, we want to do more. So what Lars is saying is true. Like, if you want impact, like in any relationship, you gotta know the counterpart. So the more you know the counterpart, the more you can have a sense of what impact looks like. And also the kind of investments. So I'll give you an example. You have roasters that say, my impact is I'm gonna come visit you every year, right? Except for COVID, but that's my commitment to you. Every year I'm coming, I'm visiting you, we discuss, we plan, we arrange, and for the next 10, 15 years, we're gonna be in a relationship. The coffee's good, the coffee's bad, doesn't matter, I'll buy. And that's very, in a way, a Scandinavian way. Very loyal, very transparent, and really in for the long term, really committed, right? So that's a great way to go about it. Long-term, sustainable, commercial relationships above the sea, fixed prices maybe, forward contracts, already great impact. Then you have roasters that say, no, actually, I can do even more, right? It's not just about helping you be financially successful and giving you the certainty or the long-term stability of the contract. I want to do more. So a good example would be, you know, Coffee Circle in Germany, also B Corp certified, right? So they opened a foundation, right? And so they were able, within their company, to allocate certain funding, and they made a foundation, and their suppliers can apply for their funds. So we were overseeing projects. There was gender-based violence projects in Congo. There was resistant varieties in India. There are, you know, capacity building and training and smart climate practices in Rwanda. So in the end, what happens is that in this case, it's the producer that says, these are my priorities, and these are some fundings that is available. Now, not everybody can be on that level, but I just give you a spectrum, and I think that, yeah, you have to ask yourself, how much can I go and how much can I engage, and the kind of investment, and just be open with the producers, because they will work with you even with a higher premium. They'll already be happy. So everything that comes afterwards, then it's a plus, and you know, there will be some returns for them. There will be some work, right? They will have to work to get that impact and get that commitment. But it's quite, yeah, it goes both ways. So I think those are some examples of how you can create impact based on, you know, your business and what you can do.
So continuing to think in a more practical way, if there's any film noir fans in here, there's a third man. The third man. And, you know, the person that we don't see, that we're not talking about, is, in this case, I think technology. Pardon?
It's a spy.
It's a spy. The spy. It's a spy. I have an iPhone. I have Google. They're spying on me. No, but Norbert, I'd love to hear what technology's role is in this, because I'm kind of hearing it like underneath everything, you know, but we haven't quite talked about it yet. So
I think the opportunities are massive, and that's why I'm sitting here, and a lot of you sitting here, and that's why I ultimately, you know, started my journey in Colombia and in the coffee industry. That's why we're here, because I was trained on databases, networks, and programming, and the worst thing I thought could happen if I would end up in a Middle European company working on an optimization problem where I can move the needle about 0.01%. And then I saw the coffee world, and I felt like, well, here's a lot to do. That was 20 years ago, but still there's a lot to be done. And what we hear is from Sarah's scramble, you know, it's a data management problem ultimately. The same happens in roasteries. That's what we encountered too. Roasters were taking notes in a notepad manually every 30 seconds, making sure that every 30 seconds their brain was paying attention to a readout. Technology can do all that automatically. We can capture data where it happens, and that gives us the basis to do all kinds of, when we on that pinnacle, in that third, basically move from the first layer up to the third in a very short amount of time, and not only do this in a one-off project or effort, but do this on a constant basis. And sometimes it sounds very abstract. It's like, yeah, this is probably very specific to coffee, and maybe only works in certain supply chains. Think about your personal budgets. If you pay everything with your cards, and I mean, I lived many years in the US, so that's everything is card-based. It was so easy for me to track my budget. It was easy to me to know my expenses, and that sometimes it's an interesting insight about knowing where your personal funds go. Now, as a company, that's a requirement. You need to know where your money goes. But even there, if you have a system in place which is easy to track and easy to do, the data is there quickly, and you can make decisions very quickly. So that kind of is that paper. The paperwork is not paperwork anymore. It's digital work. It's systems in the background which are updated more frequently, more automatically. And that's what I work very hard on in our company, to get the B Corp certification into our DNA and get the processes into our business processes, so that data, it's massive amounts of data, by the way. B Corp is not shy on asking a lot of questions. But if you can set it up in a way that it happens because the CFO produces a certain report anyway and adds that one column you need, or your EX or HR department already structures a few of those things in a way, it also answers the B Corp questions, then we don't have to do a lot of double work. And that's what I'm always getting. I feel information is part of the currency of one's business. So it's also part of the currency of a producer's business. And my vision, and it's still there, is that the producer has a very clear understanding about their business. That they move from being a farmer to being a farmer business. And that shifts them, puts them into a driver's seat in a way that they understand their own production costs, they understand their own data, they have the data available, and apparently a lot of organizations want that data. So it's why can't they not sell it? Why is there so many middle people being needed currently? It will just come with the product at a premium, or you can purchase it. Again, it's a big vision. It's millions of people. We need to get into networks, and I also would want to try that in a very ethical and clear way. So this is not about creating a special Facebook or a special Google for someone who just siphons off the data in some way. But it should happen in business processes. It should be linked to the daily business. And then I think it's hugely powerful and very meaningful.
Jill, do you have anything else to add to that as a
Yeah, the way I see technology simplifies complex processes. I think the coffee supply chain is quite complex. So from the roaster, if you go down to the producer, it's quite complex. And if you're a roaster and you want to engage with a producer and you want to buy 3 bags of coffee, and there's no technology, you want to buy 3 bags from these producers, then you need to know what are the contract terms. So how do I actually structure this contract with the producer? Then you need to find somebody who will be willing to ship your 3 bags from the origin to your roastery. Then you need to think about import, customs, financing, payment terms. These are all complex processes, not processes that are not solvable without technology, but these are complex processes. And the way I see technology and what we've done with Alfano is to make all these processes simple and make it easy for a roaster here in Europe to buy 3, 5, 10, 20, 50 bags straight from the producer. And I think that's that's what I mentioned before. It's the first step that technology makes possible. And I think, then through the experience on the technology, then you can also incentivize, and this is what we try to do, to incentivize producers and roasters to engage, to go beyond just paying the price that the producer wants, but to go beyond that. And then also what I mentioned before, all this data, and this is where also I follow what Norbert was saying. So because all these transactions happen on the platform, then you have structured data that you can use then for your reporting. And I think then when this is, for me, this is then the base, this is where technology can help. But what I find even more interesting is that when this is done, this is set, then you can think beyond that, and you can think, okay, projects we want to develop together, we want to go further than just a transaction, as also Sarah was pointing.
That's great, and I love that you pointed out going further, because something that came up a lot when we did this in Chicago with the panelists there was, and Lars, this is what I was kind of getting from what you were talking about, is thoughtfulness. And so even if you're not seeking a B Corp certification, there's a level of thoughtfulness that can be embedded in your business. Norbert, you talk about that, like using B Corp to align to the values you already had and the questions you were already asking of yourself and your supply chain, et cetera. And so we talked about last time, like that mindfulness, that thoughtfulness could be enough, or maybe you do still want to, I'm thinking about small businesses in particular, but maybe you do still want to seek certification. I'm curious, Alice, what size of a business is too small to be considered B Corp? Because we all know we can have an impact whether we have a certification or not, right? I mean, I think we all know that in the coffee industry, but does it make sense for everyone?
Can I answer that question in a second, and can I criticise B Corp first?
Yes, yes.
I know
Bring it
you
on.
do that. And you went into the fight, but we're probably on the same team. I think because I've worked with so many clients on B Corp certification, I've had even more exposure to those frustrations, which I'm sure you had. And so it's hit some struggles where it's allowed companies to certify who maybe aren't doing the work that the people on the panel here are doing and have done through engagement of suppliers and through supporting those suppliers when the big scramble hits. And there are questions in B Corp assessment about how you're appraising your suppliers and how you're helping them to improve their impact and supporting them to do that. And there are even better, there are huge amounts of points you can get, acknowledgement for your impact if your business model is actually involved in supporting those suppliers and redistributing the benefits of that work. But it doesn't do a good enough job at that right now, and I hope next year when the new standards come into play it will, because without social purpose and without thinking about the most vulnerable people across the value chain, then there's not much point in it. Having said that, I hope it will do that, and it is still, as far as I'm concerned, the best tool to sit down and use to look at your business, whatever size business you are, and look at where the gaps are, because it's so thorough in the questions that it asks, even though sometimes those questions are a little incomprehensive because of the language and tone. And in my experience, having helped startups to certify, my husband's business certified in 2019 when they were starting up, and I sit on the advisory board for a retreat business, and they did it a couple of years ago, and she's the retreat business, she's a 0 employees, lots of independent contractors, runs the business herself. It's a love project, singers will bring love into this. And for her, it was the best thing she ever did, having run this small business for 10 years, because of the journey and the process it took her through in reflecting, and then of course putting in place the governance and the policy and processes. It's really hard to make that commitment of resources and time and energy to sit down and look at 300-page question, but for most small businesses it can be the best thing that they do in terms of the impact on their business, not just the external impact on how they operate as a business. And I think for that it's a fantastic thing to do as a very small business, even though you feel like, I know there's never enough hours in the day. And when you're a huge business, of course it's an important thing to do, because the level of impact you're having globally is even bigger. And you know, you've got more people and perhaps more budget to do that kind of thing, but it has its own difficulties turning a tanker when you're a huge business. And there's perhaps, let's say, some more agile responses as a small business.
So you do have to have been in business for a certain amount of time, right? You can't do it straight away. You can do it straight away.
You could do the assessment straight away. You can't get certified until you've been in business for a year. You can become a pending B Corp though.
So you could just really start with those values.
Yep.
All of that. Awesome.
You could just use it to write a business plan.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So Lars, I'm curious if you have, and Norbert too, as companies that have certified, do you have any tips or things that you have done pre-certification that maybe have helped you when certifying, or things that you would suggest people do if they're curious about it in the future?
Yes, Anzo. Going back to the scramble. It is about a lot of data. It's about getting organized, and starting early on is helpful. So already we having this a little bit, you're having your financial data, of course, organized, having your impact data somehow organized, that helps a lot. It still also for us was a long journey. So I don't know, I have so many thoughts right now. I just thought, what is B Corp really? Why do we have to do it? And I think, well, you're either very disciplined and you stick to your values, and you always know the right decision, and you keep tight track. And then I ask all of you, why do you go to the annual checkup to your doctor? Because you could all do this on your own. You can basically keep a good diet and be healthy and do sports and do all of it and just be in great shape. But I think that doctor visit keeps you in check. And I think that B Corp certification is a doctor visit. And as you age, the requirements change. And I think that also takes care of that, and as your company changes. So for us, it was a 3+ years journey. So even being already very intentional in our in our mission and in the way we were set up, it still took us a lot of time to actually get the policies in place, to get the data organized in a certain way. And what we also didn't want to do is just collect points. So for us, it was not only about the result, but also about the journey. And the journey, so my credo was always, we do this because it should help our company to get better and be better in the way, in what we do. And then we look at how many points that is, and at the end of the day, we sum up the points. It is not, we go point hunting, get certified, and put a logo on our website. That was actually for me, that was so a critical thing. I initially did not want to put a logo on the website, but this is the wrong intention. We do this for us, and this is, so we were certified early 23, and we only started talking in 24 about it. Because we also thought, we also need to talk about it. We want to, and that's why we're sitting here. We want to engage other companies, we want to engage other people to join that journey. So it's not a, maybe I was a little bit badly influenced by pure CSR departments who are just doing the marketing part of it and not the work behind it. And I think we did all the work, so we can also do the marketing part now and be in peace with that. And I'm actually very happy, and the response is good.
That was that 14-year-old Norbert, just like,
Yes,
I won't put that on my
it's
website.
still in there.
Lars, any insights on things that might help folks?
Yeah, so I guess that we kind of did it in the same way. So we did quite early. So the process for us was rather long. So the data that we became certified for in 2021 was based on the financial year of 2019. And we were 4 people at the time, now we're 15. So we kind of had old data to put into the certification, because there was a long waiting list from when we applied to become a B Corp until we actually got certified. Due to COVID, there was just a long waiting list. But we had the same idea that we didn't want to go point hunting. We just wanted to see, can our business model, as it is today, the way that we run our business, can it actually become certified? I thought that trading directly with coffee farmers, paying a premium, trying to be as responsible as possible in everything that we do in terms of when we purchase coffee, that would really get us far into the 80 point that is required. And then when we came to the assessment, we found out that it gave us like 0.14 points. So we just looked at it and said, this is going to take a while. And I think that we spent around 4 months just answering questions in the assessment. We would have taken so much longer if kind of the world hadn't closed down due to COVID. So we had a lot of time, just the partner in the company, Lindy, and myself, just really going through the assessment alongside another consultant from B Lab in the Nordics, Stefan, a colleague of yours.
No, I don't work for B Lab.
No, I know, but he doesn't either. He works for Mac, but we have help going through the process. And as I said, it would have taken us so much longer. But we didn't change anything in order to become B Corp. And what we did instead was that after we had applied for the certification, we actually marked all the questions where we said, okay, so out of this question, we've done the first 2 elements of point hunting, but the next 7 or 8 issues in this question is actually really interesting. We should look into if that could kind of be possible. So we had like a long list of projects that we wanted to do after we applied for the certification. One of the things that we looked at was also, instead of just paying a premium to the farmers, speaking to them directly and trying to really develop the relationship with them, was actually just looking at B Corp and say, okay, so do you visit the coffee farms at a frequency of at least once per year. Do you help them in the educational department? Do you run projects that lessens their use of water or something like that? And what we found was that we kind of went back to the idea that we probably shouldn't tell coffee farmers how to run a coffee farm. We don't know anything about it. We don't know enough of their problems in order to help them out. What we can do is that we can pay a premium for the coffee, and we can build the relationship. We can make sure that they can sell their coffee to us for a long period of time, but actually going there and telling them how to run their business and which way they should develop their business was not something that we were comfortable in doing. So we kind of refrained from that because I don't think that we were, or and is equipped to do it.
That's brilliant, thank you. That's all the time we have. It's time to move on to questions from you all. Does anybody have any questions for the panelists? Yeah, I can give you the mic. Yeah, give you the power.
Hello, thank you. I'm used to hearing my own voice first, sorry. So to the whole panel, I know there's been a lot of talk lately, especially about what kind of companies are certified to B Corp, and I think that's probably also the reason why you were saying that there's a lot of overall. What's your opinion about this? I think there's especially one really large corporate company that's been able to get a B Corp certification. Obviously that's a good thing, because it means that they have been looking into all the frameworks and everything, but the criticism, I guess, is are they just using it as a marketing tool, or are they actually using it for actionable impact? What's your opinion about this?
I should probably answer that. This might be a really large business in this sector that you might.
Yes, in the coffee sector, yeah. I was wondering if this would come up. It came up last time.
Yeah, I have to say, it caused a big stir among those of us that make our living not working for B-Lab, but working with businesses to help them. And to the extent that we started a little WhatsApp group, of course, because nothing exists outside WhatsApp, but called We Need to Talk About B Corp with some critical friends of B Corp, let's say, that we brought some issues to it and talked about them, and that, of course, it was because of that, as well as some other things that have occurred, like with Brewdog, where it took quite a long time for B Corp to make a decision and action it, and then of course the decision was in some ways quite unsatisfying. And then there's obviously the communications world as well, the Havas controversy that's ongoing as well. B-Lab is still trying to make a decision about that at the moment, and slightly different issues sewn in there. The coffee company, the good thing I'll say about that is that the new standards couldn't come soon enough. Normally every 2 years the standards are redone. This time, because it's complete refresh, and because they're bringing in minimum requirements, you can't be a really big company which obviously has high standards of workers' benefits, and so therefore scores really well in workers, has really good governance because they have to, because they may be listed or in shareholders or whatever, and so scores really high there. You can't pick and choose from the new standards. There will be minimum requirements about your supply chain and your environmental impact, and I think that's really important. I totally sympathise with B-Lab's growing pains. Their mission is to have a, as I said at the beginning, inclusive, equitable and regenerative economy, so they have to try to get the big companies that cause a big impact on board, and the more that are on board, the more, like you kind of alluded to, the more change that will cause. But there sure are some big growing pains around that, and a lot of us who work on it are very critical of it as well. And I think that, yeah, as I said, the new standards couldn't come soon enough, and I really hope that will make a big difference. And then it's also a case of B-Lab, going from a toddler to a teenager, and starting from a couple of guys, and those two guys who you said you didn't even know, they've also stepped down and allowed other people to come in and recognise that, leadership needs to be refreshed as well as diversified, and there are lots of good governance practices that are growing inside BLAB to make sure decisions and complaints, etc., are made in a really comprehensive way. So I ultimately feel really supportive of women's certification, despite the controversies and criticisms, which I also, am aligned with.
We all have shortcomings, and there's the opportunity, right? Is B-Lab B Corp certified?
I have asked that myself. Where's your policy on X, Y, and Z? Yeah.
So is that a yes?
BLAB's a not-for-profit, and not-for-profits can't.
Oh, that's tricky.
So let's
Okay.
work that way, shall we?
Oh, funny, okay.
They do have a great impact report out there recently.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I have another word on that because it was a big thing, but it still is a big thing with certain big corporations being certified and others not, and the small companies are being certified. How do we compare? And it's always with those frameworks. How do we compare? We love to compare ourselves as humans, but we should sometimes really go maybe a little bit inwards and say, what are we standing for? What are our values, and what are we trying to do with it? And that, I think that relates to my earlier comment. We are not there to define Cropster as and put the seal of B Corp, and that makes Cropster. Cropster is Cropster, and it's also a B Corp in our own way, and we want to talk more about it if people want to hear it. And we are also happy to be silent and just be B Corp. And I think that goes a long way, the same way as maybe your neighbor is not folding the cardboard boxes when they put it down into the trash, right? That does not mean that you just should not do it. Or there's so many things where we always try to compare, right? What is others? It doesn't matter what the others. It matters what you do and what we do and what each company does. And that, I think, to me at least, I found peace in that. Those corporations also try it in their own way. I talked to their representatives, which are wonderful humans. I talked to farmers who sell to them, which feel grateful and are happy to sell to them. That's not the answer to everything, but it's something.
Beautiful.
Thanks. Are we afraid to say Nespresso, or is it? I get thrown down the stairs later or something like that. Okay, so
Right now, right now.
so as a coffee roastery, we were given a heads up, let's just say that, around 2 weeks before Nespresso got their certification. And we actually had a meeting with B-Lab and B-Labs in the Nordics in order to just give our take into what would happen in the coffee industry when a player like Nespresso would get their B Corp certification, because it was almost already done for in terms of B Corp. And we posed a question to say, well, how have you treated the coffee farmers? How have you paid the coffee farmers? What's the purchase price that you start with? Because we said, well, if we can start there, then at least we have something to work on. And then at the first meeting, we were told that no problem, easy, we can let you know that. And then in a written letter, we got the word that that was a business secret and nobody could know. So that really showed us that, okay, so just as Cropster, then we are not just a B Corp company. We're Clever Coffee, and we will be Clever Coffee no matter if we're B Corp certified or not. We work as transparently as possible. You can see whatever we do. You can see how far we've come or how far we haven't come, the projects that we do and the projects that we would love to do, and the projects that we haven't done yet. But we would try to promote transparency as much as possible, but please know that B Corp is not about being a transparent company. And that was really an eye-opener for me, that in a coffee industry where 2/3 of the suppliers live in poverty, that transparency wasn't a part of becoming a B Corp. That was just, I couldn't get that, I still can't. I hope that that's one of the things that would be changed with the new directive.
Any Any other questions? Yeah, please.
Are there any mandatory reports that you need to share to the outside world as a B Corp? Because that could be part of the solution, right? If Espresso was forced to say, I'm paying.
Not to the outside world. We need to present a lot of data and a lot of documentation for the data to B-Lab, but not to the outside world. We just have to stand.
Once you're a certain size, you have to have a transparent assessment on your profile site that you can redact certain data. So when you're at the size of Nespresso, you can go onto their B Corp profiles and you can download their assessments that they filled in, but they will have redacted business sensitive information like the failure of supply chain and living wage.
And you can probably choose what that is, right?
They try to be fairly strict about it, but it does tend to include financials.
But there's a lot of gray, right? Like in my MBA studies, I wrote one of the assignments, like the final project, was I had to write a report. I had to look through a company's annual report and all of their data, a publicly traded company, and analyze, are they actually adding value to the market by spending money on research and development? And what are they spending their money on? Or is all of that money being diverted to shareholders? Or most of it, right? I chose Nestle. And through that, I was noticing what was going on, and I was reading up on their cocoa supply chain and the issues they have with child labor. And they even though they have this big cocoa initiative that they publicize and all of this, they still can't verify that there isn't child labor in their supply chain. But when we did this in Chicago, Tyler Youngblood from Azahar asked the audience, how many people have been on a coffee farm? And, basically got down to how many people can 100% with 100% certainty say that there was no child labor in the production of their coffee. And nobody could raise their hand, right? And so it's so tricky. I am not defending Nespresso. That is not what I'm doing up here. But it's just something that, it's complicated when we're dealing with, these raw goods that are grown in the coffee cup, right?
Tony's Chocolate does a great job at the child labour issue and saying there is almost definitely child labour on our cocoa farms, and we will continue to work with these people and partner with them, and we will do our best and put X, Y, and Z in place to root it out. And
yes, and I was talking to someone, I'm still going to hijack this. I was talking to the guy from Patagonia. He's one of the early employees. And I asked him, who are they? And I asked him, how do you communicate your values without the humble brag? We love transparency reports, right? In the coffee industry. And so how do you do that? And how do you talk about these things? And he said, be honest about your shortcomings.
I don't think Nespresso got that memo.
They didn't get it. No, it's like, this is where I failed, and this is what I'm going to do to fix it in the future. And I'll tell you if I fail again, right? So that's the way to do it. What other questions do we have? Yes, please.
I have one question about potential limitations of B Corp, and without being an expert at all, but as with any certification, it clearly sets a minimum, but does it also inadvertently set a maximum where you don't have to go beyond, or are there incentives to go beyond the requirements that B Corp has?
Anyone else want to say?
Well, I can create a parallel to fair trade, so it's very different, right? But fair trade started in the 80s, probably even a bit earlier than that, and they went through what I'm hearing a B Corp is doing. You guys remember when we started to hear like all these large trading houses being certified, and then suddenly you're screwed, all right? And then you realize that it's not necessarily. Right? And then some people do it because they need to and they just want to slap a logo. And then people that actually are very committed to the movement and they will continue doing it regardless, right? And to a certain extent, fair trade did set a big standard. And I'm talking about early 90s. Really big standard. And then it kind of got commoditized, right? I mean, all the large trading houses and the big roasters, everybody was fair trade certified. And then what happened? Fair trade came, right? And all of a sudden, fair trade was the minimum, right? It was the bare minimum. And a lot of people actually, in good ways and not so good ways, use fair trade to say, we're actually going above it. So the fair trade minimum price, that's nothing. We're gonna pay 100% more, 200% more, 300% more. So in a way, the certification sets the minimum, but it could open for others to go above it. The risk there is sometimes we forget that sometimes those minimums are also very good. And there was a bit of a this is my really personal opinion, there was a bit of a cannibalization of the fair trade certified movement, which I'm a big fan about. Thinking that, oh, we can all do it without, we can all figure it out. So sometimes standards are good, but I think that opened the door for, say, you know, if paying 140, that was before the new price revision, if 140 is the minimum that we can do, then a lot of companies said, you know what, we're gonna do $2, right? And that pushed everybody. And so that's, I think, when fair trade opened the door to even more flexible pricing, to the uprise, which obviously followed quality, and it wasn't just because people are nice, right? So I'm hoping that to a certain extent, the B Corp sets the standards, and then maybe there will be something that comes beyond, hopefully without cannibalizing what has been done and pitting people against each other, like I'm fair trade, you're direct trade, let's tough it out. Finally, we're over that era. It was kind of painful, but we're over it, I think, right? We can put that behind us. All right, they're both great, right? They're both great. So I don't know. Maybe we could look at fair trade and see. Maybe you guys can paint a picture where you see this, knowing the B Corp and what could come after that.
I think the new standards will be the next thing, and we'll see. There'll either be a massive drop-off, and companies won't be able to recertify, or there'll be a raising of the bar, let's hope, you know, and jumping to meet it.
I think you can never take the responsibility away from the consumer and from people to ask the right question or the tough questions and really go a little bit deeper. It's no logo will ever do that. I was selling fair trade when I was 8 years old at the George store in Austria, and you know, we sold this Nicaraguan coffee, and I was at age 8 really convinced this is the absolutely right thing to do. We need to help those farmers. I had no idea where Nicaragua was, what coffee is, and later on learned that this coffee was actually really bad, and really bitter, and really tough on everybody, not only the farmers. But I still was very convinced this is a good thing to do, and later on I supported that movement to get those labels into the supermarkets, because we needed to bring it to the people, also the people who don't care, and to basically make a bigger market. And that is the problem, or that is one of the problems. We are basically smoothed us in to people's baskets, not really reflecting, just feeling a little bit better, and telling them you can purchase with 10 cents more on your orange juice, or on, you know, you can purchase a better consciousness. And I think ultimately that doesn't really work. It works for a little bit, and but it commoditizes an idea. And same is with B Corp. You can't do that. So if people buy an espresso because of B Corp and feel like now the world is a better place because they have done that, they need to take the next step and read the reports and do the work. And I think that's the hardest thing to do, to motivate people to just not stop asking the questions.
I think that has to be our last word.
Not necessarily. There's more.
Please join me in thanking our panel. Guys, we're fantastic. Thank you all for being here. And I'm sure we all have dinners that we have to run to and all of that because it's a trade show. So thank you all for being here, and please keep this conversation going with your people, because I think it's really valuable. Thanks.